Good morning, everyone. I was just watching some YouTube before work, like I do, and they were doing an interview with Andrew Yang and talking about universal basic income and automation. And I talk to clients all day about this stuff, and by the time I get home, I don't feel like talking about it anymore because I've done my propaganda work. Uh, but before I go in, I thought I would take 2 seconds to put out a thought that I know there's a lot of people that are against the universal basic income. It pays people to be lazy, is the idea. But I'd like to remind everyone that back in the day, way back when, during the Jetsons, the fantasy or the idea was that we would invent robots to do all the work for us so we didn't have to do the work and we could just do what humans like doing. Uh, and the frustrating thing to me is, had government and corporate corruption not brought money into politics and then voted and skewed our system, capitalistic system, as it was, back in the before the 80s, back before the 80s, we were on par, in 70s, we were on par to work something like 10-hour work weeks and still be able to afford a car and a house. And if our income had grown to match our productivity, the amount that we're able to produce now versus what we produced then, and got those pay increases, the CEOs, the owners of the corporations and banks and all that, their income grew in addition to what it would have. Their income grew with what our income would have grown. So so essentially, they took our raises and their raises, their income growth and our income growth. They took all of that instead of keeping it somewhat fair and even as it was in the 70s and 80s. Uh, they took it all, and our income stayed stagnant. So if we had increased with them equally as it was back then, we would all be working 10 hours a day or less. But the point that I was thinking about for this video, or the idea, was that because capitalism has become unfettered, become detached from human happiness and human oriented things, and just become a corporate creature, a non-entity that just gobbles up everything. The idea of robots now has become a nightmare. So the dream was robots would come and do all the work, and then we wouldn't have to anymore because we could just afford and have all the benefits of the robots' work and apply it to us, so we get to benefit from the robots' work. But with unfettered capitalism, with corrupted capitalism, unregulated capitalism, I guess, uh, the idea of robots has shifted and become robots are taking our jobs and leaving us poor and homeless and dying. So it's interesting. I just thought it was interesting. I still have the dream that robots will eventually benefit us once we correct for this corruption that's crept into our governments. Uh, it's just interesting to see how a fantasy or an idea of utopia, when it meets up with the corruption of today, has become a nightmare. And I, for one, will be joyous when that that paradigm shifts back over to helping humans instead of helping individual, wealthy, greedy primates, I guess. Happy day.